Larry. And first off, Comet Elinin, upshot real quick. What are you seeing, Jesse? And then I'll go to you, Larry.
Well, we did a video yesterday, Marshall, about the update. We had started tracking. What was strange about it is after the show last weekend on the 18th, some of our YouTubers immediately noticed the object coming in on our stereo A images from SETI with the naval satellite.
Right.
So we did an update. We have been updating it since the 18th. So in New Mexico, we had two astrologers on the 22nd decide to break out their telescopes, and they did two-day imaging from the 22nd and the 23rd there.
Jesse, is that astrologers or astronomers?
Excuse me, Marshall. It's been a long day. It's astronomers. Excuse me. Thank you for.
That's how you pronounce it.
Look, keep me straightened out. Things are happening so fast. Yeah, exactly. Two astronomers. Now, and so what they did was they did 2 days of snapshots so they could compare movement. And that's how you do it. You have to compile the images and look at the change in motion with the star field behind you. And what they did was detect a gas cloud. And they put it up on Space Weather. We put a video up about it, and they showed the movement of the gas cloud. It had the blue halo in it, and it was tracking with the JPL model. And so they determined that it was the remnants of Elinin. And so, but now the object we're tracking on stereo on the A satellite actually has it's not just a gas cloud. It has a interior solid mass. And what they did today was come back with those same images in the infrared spectrum, Marshall, and it was showing that the gas cloud was short on one end and fat on the other, just like the wingtip of a plane, like you would see. In other words, it was tapering back from one end. So it's detecting there is an object there. And so we're tracking, keeping that updated, and it's right there. You can go and look at it for yourself.
All right. All right. And Larry Prescott, the Elinin research team, and Larry, I know you and Ed have really been busy with chit-chat and following on all this. What have you got?
Well, I think this is interesting in that it reckons back to when I worked with Ed and Richard, and we were all talking and predicting about this gas and the type of gas that was going to be around Elinin. And I believe it was Richard or Ed pointed out that it was going to be hydrogen cyanide. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And anyway, and so now, and then I'm looking at Jesse's video, and he's saying the same thing. He's pointing out the hydrogen cyanide. Jesse, I don't know if you knew that when we were all talking about this back then, but I find it interesting now that's
where I got the information from, Larry.
Well, very nice, thank you. But anyway, it's kind of cool to see that in one sense come to pass. And now the other thing, it's kind of interesting to see if it happens, is what Jesse was referring to in the the electrical nature of it. That how if it could illuminate, not necessarily a big explosion, but an illumination. And I'm just kind of curious if that might be a bright blue. But again, we'll see. But the most interesting thing I want to throw out real quick, guys, is that I just find it so interesting that on November 8th, that asteroid comes within, what, 200,000 miles of Earth, like within the moon orbit, and just kind of like no fanfare or whatever. YU-55?
There's not much fanfare on any of it, Larry. If you don't go to YouTube, and those kind of guys are go to YouTube, there's no fanfare about it at all. And what you pointed out was it's 0.9 LD. The comet is. That's less than 1 lunar distance. And when you get within that distance, when you're that close to Earth, the gravitation of Earth has a tremendous change on the projected path.
Well, that doesn't make me feel better.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I know what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that, what I'm interested in seeing is the overall pattern of comets that are now being observed, and particularly sun grazers and sun impactors. What are the two of you guys seeing on that that's different? Larry, I'll throw that one at you, then back to Jesse.
What am I saying in terms of identification of them?
Frequency, severity.
Well, I tell you what, it seems like there's a whole lot more of them. I think Jesse in his one video was, that may be touched upon later, that he was remarking how there's quite a number of them out there right now. And it's like, NASA can pick and choose the ones they want to report or casually mention on a flyby later. So I guess the answer to that, there seems to be a lot more. Then you can take that beyond, okay, now what's causing all this?
Yeah, what's causing all that? That's the good question. That one I'll throw back at you, Jesse.
Marshall, it goes back to a video, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think we have 130 videos up. We've been up 7.5 weeks, but it's called the Grand Alignment, and you guys have talked about this too, and it goes back to the actual date of December 21st, 2012. And now we know that the Mayan ninth wave ends on the 28th from the charts that I've seen. I'm no expert in that field, but the actual alignment where between the Earth, the Sun, and the galactic center is on December 21st, 2012, the winter equinox. And if you study that video, you will see that we are not part of the Milky Way. We are in the Milky Way, but we are a sub-galaxy of the Sagittarian galaxy. We're colliding at an opposite angle with a wing of the Milky Way. And if you remember, the scientists took a infrared telescope with cameras with it was a real high, like 20 millimeter or something, and they mapped all the stars in the Milky Way trail and in our area in the infrared spectrum. Then they put the data together and made maps. I put their map on the video called the Grand Alignment, and it's like two saw blades coming into each other at different angles. When you see the video and those images, I don't see how we're even here now. There's so much collision going on that it will blow your mind. Just take a look at that video. That's going to explain why we're having this extra bombardment, and it's also increasing what I call galactic heat or solar heat. Friction does that, and as you come closer to these objects, then they're combining heat, and so we've got multiple forces at play, but this grand alignment, I think, is the key to the whole thing.
Even more so than anything else we've been looking at, Planet X, Comet Elinin?
Well, no, it's the cause of all of that.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? If you look at that video, Marshall, and any of you guys out there, you will be amazed at why we're even still alive. We're coming in such a stream of debris.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The hand of God is over us.
And, you know, I would say that there's a good case to be made for that. If there's one thing that I learned is that we do have friends out there. We may not think of them in the way that we would normally think of as friends, but one of the things that really became apparent to us, especially when we were doing channeling research, was there are a lot of races out there. The only way they can connect is through this mental telepathy of sorts, and you know, they're rooting for us. But I think that there's also, you see an awful lot of these other websites out there that are talking about there's active participation. I mean, a classic one is Zeta Talk with Nancy Leader, and she's out there channeling the Zetas all the time. You know, but I mean, that's kind of hard to say. The Zetas told her Planet X would be here in 2003, and we missed the boat on that. So, you know, and I remember having her on my show, and she said, well, they did it to trick George Bush into launching the Iraq war so that it would drain the economy. And you know, the funny thing is when she said that, I mean, it was maybe back in 2004, 2005, and I remember when she said that, I was going, boy, that's a real stretch, Nancy. That's a real stretch. I'm thinking that. But, you know, it kind of played out that way, fellas. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Larry?
Oh, yeah.
So, what is in terms of the Comet Elinin saga, all right, I mean, I saw, Jesse, you had on your YouTube channel, you did a video on we're going to be passing through the gas tail, and you were concerned about it because, I mean, that's a deadly toxic gas, but the question I have is there enough concentration to be a genuine concern?
Well, Marshall, we don't know that. We don't know it. We just got that information a day and a half ago. I mean, they confirmed it, and so all we can do is speculate. Now, in the beginning, what they were talking about was with the blue glow as Elinin was incoming. That they can determine by the color the type of gas. And if you read back on blue and on the cyanide, that's what that comes from.
Oh yeah, no, we documented that in our video, and I will say that, Jesse, that is a legitimate concern because when Halley's Comet passed through, I think it was 1910, that caused quite a lot of panic because it had only been a few decades that they had the ability to do that. All right, the spectrometry, and you know, so when they found out that Halley's Comet had hydrogen cyanide, I mean, people were panicking. They were buying the very most early versions of gas masks in those days, Comet pills. There were songs about "I'm going to die when it comes," and people were having let's die with, you know, Halley's Comet songs. I mean, that's really cheerful. And so there is, you know, there was really genuine concern, but it passed by. There was no concern for us.
Marshall, some of the things that are different now, if I can point them out, is that we have the largest hole in our upper atmosphere ever recorded. Okay? Mm-hmm. The shields are down. That hole is larger than the continental United States. Last night, we had a solar blast that struck our atmosphere. On the Boulder K index registered, I think it was a 7 or maybe a 6.5, but it was a 1.5 higher than that when you looked at the final models. There were red auroras in Alabama and Mississippi. We've never seen them here before. Red indicates the strongest type. Normally you have your blue and green shades. Mm-hmm. Red is the strongest type of energy when it penetrates. We also had a compression of our atmosphere from it. If you'll look at the latest video I did this afternoon after the show, it's called Elinin and the Two Nephews. You'll see the compression effects. The video is from NASA. It's amazing. It's the live, 2-day-old SETI images of mm-hmm. this, and as it approached Earth, and as it approached our atmosphere, and it's what we're so. You got that. Now, people have asked, why is this the 28th important with the alignment of Jupiter when we do it every 11 years? Well, this time, what it is, Jupiter is not in a perfect circle in its orbit. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When it's an elliptical orbit, and the difference between its closest approach to Sun on one orbit and in the orbit now is 50 million miles. Okay, we won't be this close to Jupiter again until 2022. So you've got your solar flares, our shields are down, we've got the magnetic pull of Jupiter dealing with. Now, there's a possibility, and Phoenix 3333, one of the YouTube guys, Marshall, that I think he called in on the last show, is real sharp, and he's talking about a binary twin to our Sun, and that's why we're seeing the images as they appear on the SETI HI1 images. If you look at the reverse gray ones and the tail that's on this thing that's not visible, it makes a lot of sense to me, but our shields are down. It's our closest approach to Jupiter. We're in a solar maximum. That's why it's all different.
So that is, all right. You know,
well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, Jessie, do you see that as having a connection to the Mount Etna eruptions, the Turkey earthquakes? I mean, you know, for the longest time there was all this speculation that Elinin or something near it. I mean, is it a type of geomagnetic effect or something that something external though that is manifesting in what's going on the Earth?
It's a combination of things, Larry, and none of them are good. You've got, we're in our solar maximum, our shields are down. Now, you've got to understand the way the Earth heats up. When we receive energy from the Sun, we receive it as high frequency. The waves are real short and real powerful. If you look at them on a sine wave, like on an oscilloscope, they can penetrate the upper atmosphere. The Earth and the surface of the Earth, the oceans, they absorb this, and as it's released slowly in a low frequency or slow wave pattern. Now, as you build up, if you've got chemtrails, if you've got greenhouse effect, and you have heavy bombardment, it's called a global or solar equilibrium that we release at low frequency at the same rate that we receive at high frequency, and we're not doing that. So as we're heating up, the atoms inside the Earth, and dealing with Elinin, especially if this thing turns out to be a variant star with a totally different magnetic field, if it is one, the density of it's going to be incredible. But we're dealing with it on that level also. So if we're dealing with Jupiter, we're dealing with solar maximum again, and this heat is exactly, the magma is rising, and if you notice in the northern hemisphere, Jupiter is in the northern hemisphere at night. It's the brightest star in the sky, and that's where our big quakes are started from Turkey, and they're coming around. It's just something to watch. We're being affected by all things at one time right now, and that's very unusual, and it's a high mark on what to watch for.
So then basically, what you're saying is that under normal circumstances, hydrogen cyanide in the comet is a non-starter. But given the fact that we have this convergence of so many peculiar factors, that all of a sudden now maybe it's not a showstopper, but it's something to seriously keep in mind?
Well, we don't know what the effects of the gas will be, but as Larry pointed out earlier, just like you have gas in a fluorescent light, and when you apply voltage, it will ignite. And Marshall, it always strikes me as if this thing glows in hydrogen cyanide, if you say, what would be the spark? What if we were going through the gas cloud at the same time we were receiving a solar CME, and it electrified it at that point with our shields down? Now, it may not penetrate in here, but actually the blue star is the warning sign. And what if everything in the sky actually just started glowing blue and we were having these giant auroras? I think it would open a lot of eyes, and that's a possibility. So it's not that just that it could come in and as hydrogen cyanide and kill everybody on Earth with gas from it. It's what are we?
In other words, it's the show. It's the show.
It very well could be. Isn't that what you guys talk about?
Yeah, Larry, this is right up this is up your alley. Take it, man.
Hey, Jesse. Yeah. Let me follow up with you on this because, this is kind of deja vu for me. One of the things, so we also kicked around on this, that, again, we were speculating, and I never realized how on target we could have been, is do you know if this hydrogen cyanide cloud will have a polarity? And if so, what is it?
Well, listen, today, if you'll look at the updated images, and they're on spaceweather.com, you got to give them the credit. But from the New Mexico astronomers that took the images, again, they did them in the infrared spectrum today, and they posted those. And it is showing one side is much heavier than the other, is almost a object is still there. So the polarity will be determined on that object. But everybody should go and look at the new infrared images of that gas cloud. There's an object there that's not showing up unless you go to infrared.
How big an object?
It looks just as big as the object we're looking at on SETI, Marshall. In the gray image is the reversals as it's climbing. And today, everybody was trying to point out, and it's so strange that we can talk about earthquakes and volcanoes and everything's real good. You mentioned Elinin, and you get started attacked on your channel. But the attacks were coming about YU-55. And in the video that I posted before the show, it's called Elinin and the Two Nephews. We point out that it's nowhere near the track of YU-55, and it now has curved left coming back over Earth, just like Elinin would.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, I copied you on that one email, that link I got from JPL, and it showed YU-55 coming in. And it's like, amazingly, they're saying, yeah, it's coming in inside moon orbit. And it looks like it's not, I mean, it's one thing passing inside the moon orbit, but it looks like it's not passing that far from the moon. Is there a level of risk there as well, or is that unwarranted?
Well, I think, isn't it listed as 0.9 or 0.8 LD, which is less than 1 lunar distance?
Well, it's 0.85 lunar distance from YU-55 to the Earth. But what I'm saying is, if you look at that video, you'll see how when it's coming in moon orbit and then crossing back out, it's like running just behind the moon.
Right. Now,
anyway, I just thought that was a little bit close. That's all.
Well, and you're right on, because what you're going to have is, all of a sudden, as it gets closer, just like you have when a comet comes around the sun, it uses that to throw it back out into orbit, the gravity. Well, and so that points out that when you get an object that close incoming, the gravity of the Earth and the moon are going to change its track. And it's going to be pulled into it just like a sun-diving comet. And that's going to be just one of the things we're looking out for. That's not, I mean, it could be big. This thing is, I think, 180 meters, which is almost 2 football fields. Hey,
Jesse, is it true then that the current trajectory of the gas cloud is blowing, or if you will, across YU-55 right now in outside orbit toward the Earth? Is that true?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know
that could have like almost an effect of blowing it outward, and we don't need that much of an effect anymore. But I saw that as well, and I thought that was kind of interesting, and I looked it up, and it is in that type of trajectory, but I can't be sure. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's a good point. But what I'm saying is there's going to be so many things happening so fast, we're not going to be able to keep up with them. So we just
oh boy,
there's no way. I mean, we would have to have a 20-team staff on a cable news channel live 24/7.
But it seems like an amazing congruence of events. It's almost like it's scripted. It's just weird.
Well, we're that generation, and a lot of people know what I'm saying when I say that. We're the last generation.
Hoorah.
So, you know, what can you say? That's what the Bible says.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of prophecy that converges on these times, and boy, that's one thing that I have seen over the years, and it was really stunning for me, especially in the early years when we were doing this, was because prophecy was the last thing I turned to. A lot of people go, prophecy first, and they start shopping around on the science. We were just trying to understand global warming, and that led us in this direction. This was a purely scientific research, and then as we started looking at not only prophecy, we went for folklore as well. All right. Ancient historical accounts, and all of that stuff. I mean, those people were telling us these are the things that are going to happen in this time. One of the things they definitely always have said is that this object's going to sneak up on you. It's not going to be something that you see it coming for a long time from far away. That when this thing does show itself, it's a rather sudden appearance, and that it looks like a second sun in the sky, and it will cause a huge amount of fear and panic. Now, with that in mind, all right, looking at Comet Elinin, let's talk about the Hopi prophecy. We have the blue star Kachina, we have the red star Kachina. Everyone's heard this. I'll just be real quick about it. Blue star is the harbinger. It gives us a good shaking, but it's the red Kachina that's really going to rock and sock. And that could come, I don't know, maybe a year afterwards. But if it is the red Kachina, blue Kachina prophecy, red Kachina obviously is going to be something like Planet X, which is right now, our position is still that it could be anything. It could be a massive comet. It could be a brown dwarf in a mini constellation. You just have to be open-minded, other than to say there's things out there that are happening, and what is unquestionable is our sun is responding to it. Now, Elinin is coming close in this period of time. It's going to be passing us close by. And the Hopi prophecy is very clear. It says that the blue Kachina will unmask itself when it dances, all right? Which means we don't see it coming. All of a sudden, boom, it is there, and it's got its front stage and center. Now, given the amount of time that we have between now and, in our video, we projected that the concern on this would go until the first couple of weeks of January. So between now and the first couple of weeks of January, what I'd like for you guys to do is talk about what could actually cause Elinin, if it is the blue Kachina, to unmask, to be this big blue honking whatever in the sky that says, folks, we're in poodoo. We're in deep kimchi. There's problems. And then also, not only looking at that, but there's other prophecy, not the blue star Kachina prophecy, that talks about a house falling out of the sky. And the only one left right now is the International Space Station. Although I know the Chinese, I believe, are in the process of doing something with their own station. But all of that being said, Larry, from what you're seeing, what could trigger a sudden unmasking of a large bluish object that scares the holy living bejesus out of us?
Oh, I would just say the obvious, in that from what I've learned so far from everyone, and that if that gas could ignite or illuminate in some way, that this is again like deja vu. I had this discussion with Richard, that I asked him specifically what color would it glow. He's so detail oriented. He went blue. And I thought, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. So, again, that could be, huge in how that would appear in the sky, considering how close it would all be. And then that starts the chain of events. If you want to go with Hopi prophecy, as we, again, discussed before, starts the chain of events as you just described, Marshall. They talk about a dwelling place in the sky will fall. And back then we even talked about, well, geez, could that be the International Space Station? Well, earlier we've talked about how there's more problems now, everything from meteorites hitting the space station, geomagnetic storms, satellites. We're talking about that. Well, again, that's in the Hopi prophecy. And then it goes on to talk about the disasters and the fire in the sky. It could be, meteors, and the CMEs. It goes on to describe that. So, I hope it doesn't play out that way, but if it does, that's how perhaps it could.
Oh, I agree with that. Now, let me give the audience out there a couple of interesting tidbits, okay? And let's talk about something called LEO. No, it's not a band from the 70s. It's low Earth orbit, all right? And low Earth orbit is an area of space above the Earth that's about anywhere from 100 to 1,200 miles approximately above the Earth. All right, exactly, it's 100 to 1,240 miles. For those of you in Europe, do your own metric conversion. Now, when we're talking about the International Space Station, it orbits, depending on where it is in its orbit, anywhere from between 173 to 286 miles above the Earth. So what you have is there's tens of millions of bits of space junk floating some 950 miles above the International Space Station. Out of that tens of millions, maybe there's 5 or 10% of that of objects that are, say about 4 inches in diameter approximately. You know, now the little ones, the itty bitty little ones, that's sandblasting. But those guys that are 4 inches in diameter, those go right through a station or a booster or whatever. They're just going to plow through it like an old cannonball. Now, we have a couple of satellites, and, you know, this is really helpful because before the show, Larry, you sent me on some interesting stuff. We've had 2 satellites, Rosat, which is German, and then before that was ERS-2. One was the size of a bus, one was the size of a minibus. I love these precise distinctions. And, but both of these things came crashing down. Now, I was watching CNN when they were talking about the Rosat coming down, and I never saw anybody trying to go ha 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 so hard, and meanwhile inside they're going, what the heck am I seeing? All right, and these 2 gals that are announcing this, and I mean, it's like they're putting on the face. I mean, I work with CNN, and I understand how it's done, and they're going through the headsets, and they're going, put a happy face on it, fluff it up, fluff it up, fluff it up, and that's what they did, and they're ha, 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 oh, another satellite fell out of the sky, ha, 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 ha. Boy, that happens, it's like, and they're doing this nonsense, and I see them do that so often. I remember when the volcano in Iceland that shut down air traffic off through the whole northern hemisphere, when it popped off, the guy on CNN was going, we're going to have beautiful sunsets. Like, right. Go tell that to everybody stranded in, you know, in the airports, can't get a flight home. You know, to ask them about the sunset. So we get this happy nonsense, all right? But we've got a lot of junk up in space. Tens of millions of pieces, anything from the size of a grain of sand all the way up to big honking boosters and whatnot. And the space station has got most of all of that junk on top of it.
Hey, Marshall, is that still manned right now?
It is still manned. And, you know, what they said was that they were planning to possibly deman the station in November. Then they came back and said, well, maybe December and this and that and fidget and fart and fidget and, you know, whatever, they're going back and forth. It hasn't been demanded yet, although I think when the time comes, everybody's going to scramble for the Soyuz capsules, and that's it, you know. We're bailing out. Goodbye. But we got this comet coming in. Let's kind of pull these other facts. It's loaded with hydrogen cyanide, which means it turns into a big blue flash bulb that goes off, possibly, if it ignites. Plus, we've got a weakened magnetosphere. Plus, we've got all of this increased solar activity. And we've already had a whole lot of stuff that's fallen out of the sky, a couple of huge satellites, namely. And, I mean, even the smaller one, you know, it had a 1-ton reflector dish, which would definitely make it through the atmosphere and hit the Earth somewhere. And so, you know, they're all, gee, you know, we're lucky. Isn't it nice that 70% of the surface is water? You know, I'm sorry, this is just not the kind of game I like to play. But with all of this, I want you guys to walk me through a possible scenario between now and the end of this year where events will compile, come together, converge, and we could see an unplanned deorbit of the ISS, the International Space Station, just on a guesstimate, guys. And
Marshall, let me address a question that Larry brought up about how the possible ignition of the gas that may cause the blue star Kachina. Now,
you got my underlay?
Okay. Now, just picture this in your mind. the Earth is passing through just maybe the tail end of the gas cloud, right? Just close enough for ignition point. And then you have an object. It may not be YU-55. It could be any asteroid. There's actually a layered JPL model in our favorites that puts multiple objects right around us right now, 20 or 30 that are right in our close proximity. All right, now, here, the Earth is going through the tail end of the gas cloud. You have a meteorite come into our atmosphere. At the same time, you've got a solar blast. And what causes gas to ignite? A spark, right?
Mm-hmm.
A falling star, a falling asteroid. What if it was the space station that had been disabled, and as it burns through the atmosphere, that's the spark as we pass through the gas tail that ignites it, and you see your blue star. You see what
wow.
So you can tie in your falling house, your blue star. Now, I want to ask you two guys something. On the last video, now, I'm not an expert in Hopi, but I have studied it. I've studied the Indian religions, and they're talking about the 28th of this coming 28th being a day of great spiritual awakening. It's the end of the Mayan ninth wave. Now, they talk about two nephews, and that's stuck in my mind, and there's two objects trailing Elinin that I'm pointing out on our videos. It's on the red sedgy images. They're parallel, and they're coming towards Earth, and they're coming fast. Now, what do y'all know about the nephews? Are you familiar with that part of the legend? I know you are.
Well, actually,
what are the names, Jesse, of the
no
two
one's
objects?
naming them. And look, Larry, no one's naming them, and so what I've learned to do is throw out what I feel inside, and I'll either get shut down or I'll get informed. But
no,
so
because Marshall described
this
in fairness, in his Hopi Blue Star video. Marshall?
Yeah, no, actually there was, now this was tracking that went back some months ago.
Yeah, I'm tracking them right now as we speak.
You're tracking
them now as we speak.
But these were also, there were objects in the video that are moving in parallel. And I thought that the Hopi word nephews was very, very an interesting use of word. Because nephew is like an extended family member. You're kind of related, but you're not living together kind of a thing.
But he's bringing them with him, right? They're coming together, right?
They're coming. Well, they're coming together. They're on track. All right.
Right.
And so you actually see them in the imagery from this older imagery. It's in the video. Can't remember exactly the date offhand, but you see these images moving in parallel. So, yes, Elinin it's well documented that it has.
They're in the last video I did just before the show, Marshall. I put those images in there as well as what I think is Elinin, and I put the video latest from NASA of the nephews.
Okay, now, I have one thing. It was something interesting that a Seeker 2 was just, it wasn't a question in the virtual chat room, but I thought it was a good point that he made. And he said a maser in a comet would not be focused energy, would be mass, but not one in one direction only. Comet Holmes massed, and the color would be blue, as Holmes was. So what about Seekers 2 talking about this as a maser effect?
That it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Hey, listen, Marshall, one of the guys that called in on this show, and I talk about him quite a bit because he's so sharp, his name is Phoenix3333, talking about being a binary star twin to our sun. And when you start dealing with that mass, you're talking on the level of laser. And if anybody will look at the last images of SOHO today, in an Earth projected pattern, it's one of the, we've had these giant shock concussions of these CMEs that just penetrate the entire solar system. The last one today looked like a laser beam directed. If you're looking at stereo A, it's Earth directed. Now it may just be a glancing blow, but when you first see it and if you step it through, it looks like a laser light. It's amazing that you said that.
So Seeker 2 really hit something on the nail there.
Well, it appears that this object that we're tracking has an unusual effect on the sun as an energy directing. In other words, they have something more than just a planet and the sun would have as far as your electromagnetic gravitational pull. When you go to the frequent highest level of light into your laser spectrum, then you're talking about immense power. And when we're going through an outer alignment, I think around, November 22nd, 23rd, I'll have to look on the models if they're correct, then the Earth would be directly in that beam, just as it was on March 15th when we had the Tokyo quake.
Okay.
Excuse me, the Japan quake.
Right. Well then, all right, then we have two threat scenarios here. One is we have dust tail, and the other is gas tail. And I'll say, in the video, I remember, when we were chatting about it, and Ed and I just didn't see it as a concern. However, you just now raised some excellent points. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are happening. That it's what if you have a bullet and you have a cartridge case, but you don't have a primer, you don't have something that works. Put a primer on it, and now you got a deadly bullet. And so
primers going around right now.
Plenty of stuff that could prime it, fire it off. So, are you saying then that this period of time we're passing through the gas tail is we could see a celestial event in terms of we could see something lighting up and maybe the International Space Station getting clipped pretty bad?
Well, what we're doing, we're having to speculate, Marshall, because
of course,
the tools that our taxes are paying for, we're not given privy to. So we have to speculate. But when you put as many minds as we've got working on this now, everybody's not going to be wrong. And
yeah,
what
right,
happens
and
is
Jesse Marshall, if I could add, I mean, we're talking about a celestial aspect right now. While we sit on a rock hurtling through space that is having tremendous earthquakes, volcanic activity that could spawn one of the biggest tsunamis in history from La Palma in the Canary Islands. I mean, we have all these other things going on. Like, even if we didn't have all these other celestial concerns, it's like, okay, we got enough cooking. It's kind of almost like, pick your poison, which iron in the fire. It's amazing, as Jesse put it earlier, that we're still here. I keep thinking of that, Jesse.
But you know what amazes me, guys, is how many people still say, well, I don't see what you're talking about. I mean, it's like, do you pick up a paper? Do you read? But then on the other hand, I understand, because the coverage of this stuff in the corporate media it's a very weak dribble at most, and when they do it, they tend to be very dismissive, and they poo-poo it. And I agree with you, Jesse. I mean, it's just really frustrating that we get stuck with the check, but we don't get the steak.
Well, Marshall, you know what the irony in the humor in the situation is?
There's humor, and there is. Start with that.
There is. There actually is. And
there is.
And the first part is everybody relax. God is in control. The second part is that we've talked about the different rays of the sun and how they can affect DNA structure.
Right.
All right. Now we talked about that possibly in the ancient Sumerian text with the Anunnaki, that they did some DNA changes in order to manipulate man into doing their good. I mean, doing their bid, if it was searching for gold or digging gold or whatever. Well, now I'll say the people or the powers that be have spent all of our money and dug these great big bunkers. They're underground as this light comes through, and our DNA is changed, and we are spiritually awakened. The funny part is, we talked about it on the channel today, is they could come out of the hole if they're not trapped by earthquakes in their own doom and not be enlightened, and we'd have to open up one of the FEMA camps for the slope class. Because they would not be where we were at. It would have backfired. That's just a thought.
No, I think it's a good thought. I saw it. I mean, it's in my book, Crossing the Cusp, I talk about this. I think the only way the elites can survive it is during the worst of it, they're going to have to be under heavy sedation.
Hey, Jesse and Marshall. I went through this Hopi thing pretty deep, and if you recall in the verbiage in their text, it talks about those that survive will do it in a spiritual manner, and that those that seek physical shelter will not survive. They actually come out and say that. I thought it was kind of interesting. What an interesting way to approach such a calamity. A spiritual salvation.
The Bible says that we'll be changed in the twinkle of an eye. And
in the Hopi
prophecy,
prophecy,
the mountains to fall upon them.
It refers to a spiritual survival versus a physical one.
That's exactly right. And that's why if you're underground and you don't experience that, if it is a light-changing event that God is going to do it with, and you're not there, then it just backfired on you, and so be it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jesse and Marshall. We talked about this earlier with the neutrinos changing the aspect of DNA. Remember that months ago on that show?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, this could do what Jesse says, but Jesse, I think you're bordering into the realm of religious, and excuse me if I can be blunt, some degree of religious dogma is saying that those underground would not be enlightened because of lack of the bombardment. I can see how that physically might be true, but I think that it is kind of like severe speculation.
It is severe, but when you're dealing with the unknown,
Jesse,
it could be a possibility is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it is speculation.
Guys, let me jump in here. Let me jump in.
Okay.
All right. I don't think it's speculation, Jesse. It's history. Let me explain to you. I published the Colburn Bible, and this is the reason why we found this book. And, you know, my expression, destiny comes to those who listen. Yeah, if you're just telling the universe, throw me a bone, I'm going this way, it usually does. We were vetting Zecharia Sitchin. All right. And when I first came to it, it was like, well, it's translation, it's ancient Sumerians. Give me some hard data. And, you know, the answer came back, shut up and read it. All right. That was from my other researchers. So we're doing it. I said, well, if we're going to take Sitchin seriously, we have to corroborate it. There has to be some other folklore besides Sumerian that has detailed accounts of this object. The Egyptians and the Hebrews. You read the Old Testament, the first 5 books, that's the Torah, the Tanakh, and you read the Torah, and it is describing an object called the Destroyer. The Egyptians called it the same thing, the Destroyer. Now, depends on which eschatology of Christianity and which book, Bible you're going to buy and the translation in it. Some of them will translate it to Destroyer, others will use other terms, but it is Destroyer. The Egyptians call it that very clearly. Now, here's what they said, is that the process is what they labeled the Great Winnowing. And I described this in real depth in Crossing the Cusp. And I was very impressed by what the ancient Egyptians were saying, because they said the folks that survived this, very specifically, the stout-hearted will not go down to destruction. All right? And it takes moral fiber to survive it, because they say that it causes so much fear that women become infertile, men become impotent. In other words, we stop reproducing. I don't know about women. For guys, we really got to be scared before we stop thinking about that. Real scared, okay? Super scared. But the other thing it says is that they just drop like flies. The people, literally, the fear wells up in them so badly that they just die from the fright. Now, the funny thing was I got corroboration with that. We did a whole lot of research with channeling different sensitives, different entities, and we had a protocol. We tested on, we vetted them, and we had vetted sources. And our process was very simple. We said, give us, you know, an event, a weather event 6 months out. And they were just like nailing it every time. They'd say, yeah, you're going to have a typhoon. It's going to go this way, then it's going to go that way. Sure enough, exactly when, where, what they were saying, or here's your hurricane season for next year. Exactly the way it played out. You know, it just stunned us when we would go back into our research notes, and there was our vetting data, and that, you know, the call was made. So you can find somebody that's that accurate on television to forecast an event 6 to 12 months out. I sure would love to know so I can tune in. But the thing here is that these guides were very clear. What they told us, and it wasn't 1 or 2 or whatever. I mean, we heard this again and again. We didn't look for, one of the things in the protocol, no one single voice was omnipotent. Somebody says, I'm the only answer. We say, and, you know, we know where the door is. Bye. The other one was we looked for trends, all right? Not specifics. And what we're specifically with trends, we wanted what we call the drum beats, things that kept coming up again and again and again and again. I don't care how they explained it, but they always were talking to the same exact thing. And then the third thing we did was we used cross-reference questions to make sure that we didn't have channel filtering from the sensitives, because maybe they were just, you know, didn't want to relay some of the information that they were getting, or they would change it a little bit. That usually happens when it's like, Uncle Harry didn't bury the money in his backyard. He spent it. What? I'm going to kill you. You know, people freak out when they get the bad news. What they said when we asked them about, what about the deep underground military bases? Oh, they know all about that. All right. And they said, they're not going to do any better under the surface than you are above the surface. A lot of those deep underground bases are going to be crushed because of a pole shift. Exactly. And so when they designed all of those bases, what they were really worried about, and which is the principal threat, which is solar, all right? Huge solar storms. You want to see what that looks like? Go rent a copy of Knowing with Nicolas Cage and just skip right to the end of the movie. Trust me, that'll wake you up. And they were just saying, look, a lot of them, they're just going to get ground to pieces, all right? And so they're not going to do very well, but they're not going to be, they're not going to disappear either. There's a bunch of us going to survive. There's some of them that are going to survive. I can tell you that the elites are already laying plans for maintaining control in the post-historic world.
But you'd have to be underground to survive the solar.
You have to be underground to survive the solar.
In the physical. In
the physical. So,
and it may be more than just the physical we're dealing with. And that's biblical. It goes into the Hindu, the Mayan, the Egyptian religion. I'm a Christian by faith, and I deal with the Bible, but I never close my eyes to the rest of the world. I collect data, and if you use the knowledge that God gives you, you can discern when someone's giving you, when they're trying to shoot it to you. You can tell. God gives you a discernment that will allow you to filter. But there's things in every religion in this world that you need to know, and when you put them all together, you come up with a plus sum.
Yeah, Jesse, I know, and without, going down this road of religion, I was raised a Baptist, very strong religious upbringing, but as I grow older and read and learn more, I realize how things often are not as they appear and are often far more revolutionary than what may have been in the Bible, like whether there were books left out, whatever. But, I mean, this universe is truly remarkable, way beyond, my imagination or what I was taught growing up and, in religion. So sometimes when certain things are dictated to happen or around something else, I don't want to say I don't believe it, but I'm just saying, yes, I heard it, and I like to stick more to a science aspect of it.
Well, I always go to science first, and not first, but I always go to science because it makes it easier for me to explain to other people what's going on. But I go to God first because He's never been wrong, Larry.
And but anyway, that's why you have the credibility you do online.
Well, I'm just saying that, I would never, I've been wrong, but I would never intentionally mislead anybody. But I do go to God first. But when I was in college, I studied world religion. I read the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu Bible, and different religions from around the world, and I gained a great amount of knowledge from all of them.
Okay, Jesse, then let me ask.
God created the universe that we're studying, Larry. And
but you believe that aliens created us.
Yeah, but God says in the Bible, it is an honor for man to study my mysteries. So
you find that aliens created us?
No, I said God created us.
Well,
I'm not saying that there was not a DNA interference in the process. Okay, I'm not saying that.
That's
fair. I'm saying God created us initially.
Well, God creates everything, and yes, what was a DNA manipulation to make us.
But I am a science head now, and I love it, and I always have, and I always go there first, and it gives you documentation in both hands.
Well, I think we as a species are part alien. We are aliens. I mean, I tell you what, if you boys ever really experienced gold fever, I had it. When I was a young man, I knew what gold fever was like.
I know where you're going.
And I'm telling you something. I do not know how it is that we as a species could have, come from apes and this, that, and the other thing. We don't think of bananas more favorably than gold over bananas, all right? I've had the gold fever, and it's very unnatural, and it's very intoxicating. I mean, it's more powerful than sex drive. Now, that is something that has to be engineered in. So, yeah, I do put some credence in the whole theory that we do have extraterrestrial involvement, but I don't give a damn about all of that. Because it's here, it's now, it's our planet, we're working the claim, okay?
Yeah,
that's
it.
Yeah, but Marshall, I bring it up if what's happening is within the context of something else,
Yeah, and so, I mean, this just raises all the questions, and I think, we're at the top of this hour now, guys, and so this is when I usually give everybody a little bit of music so I can put on the tea and throw the cat out. And what I'm going to do tonight since I'm running the screening room by myself, folks, is I'm going to play Lives in the Balance again. Just am addicted to that song now. And John Snardo sent it in to me, and it's like I got it on my desktop, and I'm playing it all the time. The lyrics just touch me so deep. But for those of you that like to come on and talk with Jessie and Larry, the guest call-in number is 818-495-6962. That's 818-495-6962. You can also use Skype. And come on in. I'll bring you into the screening room, and just give me your name, or where you're from, excuse me, I don't need the number, and I'll get you on in the second half, and we'll start out with a few calls if we get anybody that's coming in, and if not, man, we got so much to go on to. So with that, I'm going to start Lives in the Balance, so guys, hit them speed tiles. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Hi, Marshall, thanks for having us on. My aunt is actually listening in Panama, and we've been following this kind of stuff for quite some time, starting with like the New World Order mess, and just because we keep up with what our Bible says and what's going on in the world, and it's all gotten very concerning to most people who are awake and listening and paying attention. But this Elinin thing, it kind of scared us all, especially with the drills that went on in Denver recently, and where everybody was that was anybody at that particular moment. And when you all started talking about how you check with science like we do, check with the Bible like we do, and many other sources, because we don't feel that relying on any one of these is very smart, but relying on the mass of information from all over seems to be the only way to put anything together. And what we found is that yet again, here we come on another important date, and right around that time, oddly enough, we're going to have a bunch of drills going on again. I just heard about a tsunami drill on top of the other drill we heard about yesterday or today. And do your fellows know anything
do you know
about
we have
these
a huge
kinds of
drill?
things, how those relate?
Well, we have a huge drill coming in not too long where they're going to have the first test of the National Emergency Broadcast System, and so they're going to be taking down all of the broadcasting across the country. Does
anybody know what temporary means for a temporary period of time at that?
It'll probably be long enough just to test it. But Larry, Jessie, have you guys heard anything on this on your end in your research?
Yes, I have. It's supposed to just be temporary, but the one thing that I would add that this is the first time that this has occurred, and it's also somewhat unusual that this would happen like the late morning after this YU-55, this asteroid that is coming within moon orbit, within 200,000 miles of the Earth on the midnight November 8th or the morning of November 9th. You pick which one. But that just seems kind of odd that the closest asteroid pass in quite a while of one that happens to be fairly large, 1,300 meters, would occur on the 9th, and that's when they're having this drill. So again, you never know. But again, it's somewhat unusual.
Yeah, you sound like my aunt and I with the, I don't know what it means, but it's very interesting. Everything is incredibly interesting these days.
Yeah.
So
but one thing that I could share with you, because, like Jessie and me to some extent, that, we're talking about perhaps a calamity that could occur on a global scale with a lot of humanity all at once, when really every day on this planet, people are meeting their end of the world, whether it's a car crash, death, disease, some kind of illness, or in a mass way with the gas chambers in Nazi Germany, or Indians by the Americans, or you can name it. But so no matter what happens, whether it's on a personal level or global, it is that personal spiritual awareness and preparedness that I would have to refer to, that the Hopis talked about, that are really talking to me now. And so, whether or not that's speaking to me in a way that somehow relates to the mainstream Christianity, I don't know. But again, kind of a coincidence.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for the research and studying that you do. It sounds like y'all mirror the same kind of attitude that we have about it, is start with what history shows us, because otherwise we're doomed to repeat it, and then pay attention to what's going on around you and keep that in a solid foundation of your faith. And generally, when we hear people like y'all on the radio saying, just the scare alone will have many drop like flies, I understand, because that's what we go through when we're hearing about it. You almost want to push it away and say, no, I don't want to think about this. But you know that you have to be diligent and watch, or you have no chance. But thanks again, and sorry to keep you so long. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, and a big reach out there to Barbara in Panama. Thank
you so much. Y'all have a pleasant week.
You too.
All right. So the Jesse, are you back in from?
I'm here. I'm listening. She did great there. She's
didn't she? Was that an amazing call? And she had her, and I really loved her. She came in on Skype, and her mom is in a three-way with her, just listening in on it. She's in Florida. Her mom's in Panama. You know, there's times when the internet just slap is cool. You know.
Yeah. Hey, listen, she's from down. She's not far from us. I've been down. I like to camp in Brighton Beach, just this side of Panama City down in there. It's a beautiful country.
Wow.
Beautiful. But what she was talking about, Marshall, is it's a global awakening. She's sensing what we're all sensing.
Well, you know, guys, there is a global awakening, and I can tell you one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm going to be doing a video on the Occupy Wall Street movement. And I see it as a researcher very, very different from how other people are seeing it. I listened to the media reports, and there's a lot of intellectualizing. There's a lot of dismissiveness. That's going on from the media side. On the other side, on the ground, you see all of these other groups that are showing up for no other reason than the cameras are there. So, you know, you got Palestinians over there screaming death to Israel, kill all the Jews. You got other people saying death to these other guys, kill these other guys. And then you got the provocateurs and troublemakers, and I'm wondering how many of those provocateurs are on payroll. But on the other hand, I've been watching this thing from a standpoint of it being a consciousness event. And the reason why it fascinates me is I'd already been in the computer industry for a few years when Tiananmen Square came around. And I was doing work on communications, facsimile transmissions, early email systems. It was pretty primitive then, but I would say more survivable than what we have today. That was certainly the truth. It was very, very rugged communications. But what happened in Tiananmen Square was amazing because you had this hemorrhage of information coming out of the most oppressive regime in the world at that time. They couldn't stop it. The faxes, the simple email systems that we had back then, they were getting the information out in any number of ways. And so we were seeing what was really happening, and it was a consciousness event for China. I think that we're seeing some of those same factors here because when you look at other movements, usually they're socioeconomic in nature. So someone is going, you know, we want gays are marching for, you know, the right to marry. People are marching for one political right or an economic privilege or another. They tend to be angry about their demands. There's going to usually be someone that winds up being a spokesman with a list of demands, and then they can either trivialize them, get it violent, and knock it out, or they can negotiate and bargain them away and give them nothing eventually at the end. You know, it's when the rich guys have taken all those Zig Ziglar negotiating courses, they use it. You know, you come out on the short end of the deal. But all of those things are directed, they're hierarchical in their organization. There's a lot of things that are very, I would call 20th century about it. I'm looking at this, and there's nothing hierarchical about it. There's nobody you can nail with a list of demands, all right? And the people are not screaming, yelling for blood or whatever. I mean, they're going, hold on a second. What are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our world? They're asking very deep and profound, they're putting a very deep and profound questions out there. And I mean, the media is obviously going to be uncomfortable with it because it doesn't sell credit cards and tampons. All right? Whatever they're doing, they can't translate that into news coverage that makes money. As a Planet X researcher, for years, we've been waiting for signs of a consciousness event triggered by solar interaction. You know, in 2004, I published the book, Indigo ET Connection. And there I took my stand. I said, you know, our evolution as a species is tied to solar activity. We have got, you know, whatever is in our genes, in our uncoded DNA, we know uncoded DNA, which is about 97% of the stuff that makes us up that they don't know anything about. What they know about is stuff that makes protein. So it's only about 3%. But what they do know about this so-called junk DNA, which what they call uncoded DNA, until they learn that it can alter the behavior of coded DNA, and it responds, and so we evolve. My premise has always been that I don't care whether we were completely of this planet or we're a hybrid species or whatever. To me, how, you know, it's like a big bowl of soup. You know, you throw a handful of this, a handful of that, but in the final analysis, it comes out of the same fields. To me, it all goes back to God, all right? And whatever we're going to be has been in us since the get-go. And it's waiting for something to kickstart the engine to get us moving in that direction. So the evolution, to me, is not speculation. I think that there's clear signs of it. You look at the indigo children, the rise of like Mensa, but I also look at other changes. There's NGOs, to me, are an important thing. These non-governmental organizations, they're out there taking care of needy people, people who need help. They do it a lot more effectively than governments. They're self-funded, self-managing. They don't go to anybody to say, give us tax dollars. They're not setting political power. They're not walking in with armed troops, but yet they do a lot to help people. You got folks that get on ships, and they put their lives in harm's way so that someone can't run a harpoon through a whale that's part of an endangered species group. So those, to me, are huge changes. That says, yes, I mean, we are evolving as a species. We're moving from Homo sapien to, if you will, Homo spiritual. And so you can look at the events that we've been talking about with like blue Star Kachina and the mass die-offs and everything that's going to happen. I see that. And I dread it. And I don't want people to suffer that way. Never have, never will. I would just as soon, please, let me be right. Let me have the honor of listening to the world laugh at my expense. It would be like honey flowing into my ears. I would relish nothing more than to have the world laughing at me because nothing ever happened. And I bet you two guys are the same way.
Oh, I know what you mean. And nobody wants that kind of stuff to happen.
That's right. What about you, Jess?
Well, Marshall, it's going to happen. And the positive thing that I think about is when you go back to the beginning, I think we were spiritual beings in the beginning, in the original war in heaven, and it's a return home. And so there's nothing we can do about it, and I think that all the volcanoes, the earthquakes, the solar flares, the comets are only God's way of getting our attention. And through the use of if we're talking about solar flares and the energy from the sun and the DNA change, he's using it in that way too. But it's simply to get us to look up instead of around us all the time and being bogged down in what we're doing. There's a higher calling, and we're being focused at that point. That's what I think.
Hey, Jesse and Marshall, let me throw this out. I had to do this, a shout-out. Somebody gave me a book to read called Frequency by a lady named Penny Pierce. I don't know if you ever read that or not, but it has nothing to do with the movie called Frequency, but she writes it from an intuitive healer kind of perspective. But do you guys know, is it true that the Earth in its solar system is passing and approaching an area of space right now that is exceptionally high in a type of energy, I forget the name of it, that's emitted from the center of the Milky Way, which is a black hole? Do you know if that's true?
Well, Larry, it matches our video called the Galactic Alignment, the Grand Alignment perfectly. You have to go into detail on the video. It would take an hour. But
well,
what
no, that's okay. I'll just kind of curious about that.
It matches it exactly. On December 21st, 2012, the sun's in an alignment. The Earth, you have the Earth in between the Earth in the center of the galaxy, or the center of the Milky Way, which is composed of millions of stars. Not one star like our sun with its gravitation and its light force. There's millions of stars in a focal point. And on that day, on the winter solstice, the sun is going to come between the Earth and that center point of the galaxy, focusing a beam. And that goes all the way through your Maya and everything. But if you now, the astronomers are admitting that, and it is in our video called the Grand Alignment. I'm not trying to push the video, but there's a lot of knowledge there.
But Jesse, what you're saying is you're describing the disastrous event of the end times, right? When you have that shot.
It may not. I don't. It's not the end times because, Larry, it's the change. Then we have if you go.
Anyway, Jesse, before you go down the rabbit hole, what I was speaking was more in general. The way Penny Pierce refers to in her book, it's kind of, I'm not quite, I'd have to go back to the book, but it's an energy level or a consciousness type of raising energy level that is coming out, and it's hitting everyone, enlightened and unenlightened people as well. And
That's right.
It's having the effect on Earth. and it's having the effect on humans and the entire joint consciousness of the planet, and they're saying that people have no choice but then to think about this as well as have activities in their lives accelerate.
That's exactly what's happening, Larry. The difference is, are you prepared for it and are in the position to take advantage of it, or are you going to be surprised by it? So if you know what you're saying is going to happen, and it is going to happen, be prepared for it.
And faith sorts out the rest.
It is happening. Exactly what you said is going to happen.
Yeah, well, guys, I'm going to tell you one thing. I see more people looking up these days.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the point.
That's a big difference. That is a big difference. 2 suns in the sky. These people are reporting this stuff, and I just did for Watchers 3, and this was Pinlight in Hollywood, and actually they're going great guns, and Warner Brothers is going to probably syndicate them. And they were asking me about 2 suns, and because they're getting the images that are coming in from China and other places, and they've had experts, and we've done analysis, and a lot of times people are seeing something and they're, it's an optics issue, or the interesting thing is like they'll shoot through a window. And what folks don't understand is most of us now have double or triple pane windows, and they're going to have some gas that's in there, insulating gas. This stuff can create a second image on the sun. And if the glass itself, the window pane, is creating that image, you're going to see it, and it's going to look real to you, and it's going to look real to your camera, because it is real, because you are actually witnessing something that's in front of you, not something that's interfering in the optics of the camera. But I think what really gets me was I've been watching these 2 suns in the sky videos for many years. Now we started getting a few dribbles, in 2007, and then into 2008, and these were, we ran them down. We ran articles on Yowza, YOWUSA.com about it, and the cell phone sundog photos. And we knew it was disinformation operatives, and they were just pumping this stuff into the internet on a real steady basis. And what they really did was that they desensitized the public to this kind of image reporting, so that when somebody does put up a 2 suns photo, they immediately will say, cell phone sundog, cell phone sundog, 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 sundog. And it's kind of like a mantra. So there's a lot of dismissiveness that was programmed into it. But what I'm seeing is genuine reports. People are looking up. They are taking notice, all right? They're just not, where's the next bus going to be, or, I got to catch my train or whatever. They're looking up more often. And they see this, or they see what they think is 2 suns, and they're emotionally impacted by it, very much like what MUFON researchers find when, someone says, I saw a UFO, and then they're trying to validate that whole thing and finding that it's really thin on the data. But on the other hand, they're looking at somebody that's profoundly affected by the experience. And so, as a researcher, it puts you into, why is this person so profoundly and genuinely affected by this? That is what I'm seeing. And so, and I think as we move forward, it's hard for these people who are seeing this stuff because they really don't understand the technical specifics, and they're running a gauntlet of pre-programmed propaganda, disinformation to desensitize the public on this. And I'm seeing that the disinfos have stopped doing the feeds like that. What they've done is they've gone to the second stage of their campaign, which now they've gone from being the planters of disinformation to the debunkers of disinformation. And so they're posting videos and debunking it with these, and you can generally tell their tactics, because whatever they do, there's a lot of movement. That's the first thing. I look at a video of 2 suns video, and I see all kinds of movement jerking around all over. 9 times out of 10, dollars to donuts, that's a disinfo puke. Because by doing that, it makes it really difficult for somebody to go in and take a hard look at what you're actually reporting. So, to me, that is, we're going to see more of these reports, and these people are going to have a harder time getting it out. But at some point, we'll all be looking up at the sky, and we're going to know. And then all of this is over. But I have a question here for a Seeker 2. This is to Jessie. Seeker 2 says, Jessie, is there an update on the Secchi images showing the comet-like object with the tail turning to the left
I launched it just before the show, which would be your time 7 Pacific time, Marshall. It probably went up 6:30 Pacific time on the very subject. It has not only the image turning left, it also has the 2 nephews. It's called Elinin and the 2 nephews. Okay. It has all 3 objects.
So there you go, a secret too. Make sure you get onto Jesse's channel. It's Mr. Comet Watch on YouTube, and definitely do this. And by the way, I just saw on the board just rolling up from Milton Tours. He says, Dutch sense is not the same since he has been shut down. He lost my interest. Milton, I am with you, Bubba. Absolutely. Dutch. We had Dutch on the show. He was supposed to come on a second time, stood us up, and didn't even tell us he was going to stand us up. And because I had been writing him and just said, Dutch, you're going to lose your channel. You're going to lose your channel. And he was doing this appeasement nonsense where he was sucking up to him. And, oh, God, that's like chumming the water while you're in it. You know, it's like, hello, here I am. I'm behind the boat in the water. Throw the fish heads, you know. And that's what Dutch is doing. It was really stupid. And he's right, you know. He just, once he did that, once he went to appeasement, he lost it for me. With that, I want to ask a question here, Jesse. What kind of nonsense are the disinfo pukes giving you?
Marshall, as long as we talk about volcanoes and earthquakes, we're fine. If we mention the word Elinin, it's like the automatic fill in on Google. If you say ELE, you don't even have to put NIN on the end of it. We're getting attacked. But look, you said something.
How do you get attacked? Tell us about that, because I mean, this is something people need to understand what's happening to us.
On the first level, you start getting attacked in your comment section. Now, but we have we've been on October 31st. We'll have been up 8 weeks, Marshall. We're approaching 1 million listeners. Before I can reply to that type of stuff, there's 10 of the guys that work with me and look at this channel and send. They'll attack them. I don't even have to anymore. They shut it down. But you said a key thing a while ago, and you said desensitize. All right, now we're trying to redo the JPL model with a current tracking of Elinin, right? We're having to do that on our own. Well, now on the desensitizing part, what if they gave us the JPL models just like we're finding now? That's a week or 2 ahead of itself, right? Everybody's going to start talking about it, and then when it doesn't happen on that date, everybody blows it off. Oh, it's all baloney, right? Now here it is, and they can't deny it anymore. But it happened to us on that same level of throwing up disinfo at the first, and then delaying the process. And so I'm waiting now. But as soon as we mentioned it, now we weren't on the 22nd when the 2 astronomers in New Mexico brought this up. We brought it up, and we were attacked as if we made the entire article up. So, and then I went to a lot of the guys' channels that were attacking us. There's nothing there. Not one video, nothing.
I know.
As if the channels were created as an attack disinfo thing. But listen, I'm much stronger than that, and you guys are too. They don't bother me. I'm going full steam.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, they know where we live. You know, this is, you get into this, you just don't, if you're in for a dime, you're in for a dollar, and you just got to go all the way. I can tell you, I have experienced exactly what you're talking about. In May, I published an article on is Comet Elinin a decoy? And I raised that question.
Sure did.
Oh, boy. Oh, did they really get after me on that? I mean, it's like in every little way that they can. It's a death of 1,000 stabs, isn't it? You know, I mean, they have resources that just stun you. And people really don't understand it. But, I mean, this is something here that I want to talk to your folks out there that follow your channel and all of that. And here's what I want to say to you folks. Jesse and I have come together. We're going to be collaborating. And this is, he's putting a lot of work in, and I'm putting a lot of work into it. And what I'm doing with Yow Radio is I'm going to go to an ad hoc schedule. What does that mean? It means we're not doing a regularly scheduled Tuesday night show. The next one, next week with Robert Ryland, will be the last scheduled show for some time. And the reason why I'm doing it is twofold. One is it takes about 2 man days to produce a 2-hour show altogether. And if I get volunteers, it helps out, but still the same, I got to carry the water. And once you have a schedule with something that's fixed, a fixed date, then it becomes the tail that wags every other dog in the room. Just not a dog, it's the tail that wags all the dogs. And so by going to an ad hoc basis, we can do shorter shows, and we can do them more frequently when we have something to talk about with regards to breaking news. So, you know, you got to stay on it. This is not an entertainment schedule. We're going off entertainment schedule because I want this to be a collaborative research element, all right? Everybody always says, well, Marshall's in it for the money. Well, I don't make any money with this show. But
Marshall,
I do it because it's the research.
Can I say something about that
yeah.
sense that was brought up in that? It goes right along with what you're talking about, and before it gets past us, is he was one of the leaders, and we don't know what kind of pressure he went under, and I'm not going to judge what he did.
Huge,
but let me say this. What I've done in order to go around that is provide the tools for nearly 1 million people in 7.5 weeks to do it on their own. If I go down, it's over with. It's like Occupy Wall Street. They have the tools. You can stop me. You can't stop the other people. They have the tools.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
So that's right, Jesse. That's the reason why you do it. Because you know what? Let me just speak very flatly here.
Okay.
My message to the disinfo pukes that have been pounding on me since last May. Okay? Screw you and the horse you rode in on, cowboy. Okay? Now you're attacking us. You've really been whacking us. Well, I'm not going to go away. I'm going to metastasize. And that's where you come in, Jesse. That's where your people come in. I'm really counting on your folks to step up to the plate, not sit there and be lurkers and anonymous listeners and go, well, gee, I want to ponder it. Let them go out.
You couldn't stop them now if you tried.
Well, we got to get them on the air. We got to get as many different people on the air. You know, and folks, for those of you out there, it's not about being right. You don't have to be right. You just have to want to get it right. That's it. And we want to get you on the air because if Jesse and I go down, you're there, you pay it forward, you carry on. That's part of the responsibility of doing this. We just have to be of a mind to say, look, this will not do. And we're going to do something proactive about it.
Marshall, it's already started. The fire started. It can't be put out. We could stop right now, hang up the phones, and it's going on. I'm telling you, I get so many people on my channel every day sending me information about tools that they taught me about, that I've taught them about, that you couldn't put it out. You can't stop it. It's too late.
Well, I'm glad for that. I'm glad for that. But I want to do more than just sit here and comment about it or opine. I want to make it happen even faster. I want to get more people out there. I want my listeners to start hearing names they've never heard from people out there just like them, get off their butts, do their homework, and make a difference so that others can survive because lives are in the balance.
Well, it's part of the growing awakening, Marshall. We were put here to do what we do as simply as tools. We're not above anyone else. God just chose a few people to show a few other people. Now it's their time to show other people. And that's a ripple effect.
That is a ripple effect. Now, in my video, put up, I was on my channel, and you link to it. And I'm telling folks, you got something. You got to get it to Jesse. Give him a blurb, a link to something if you've published it or whatever. And we do an ad hoc schedule, which means you don't have to be, you know, working your schedule around something that's arbitrary. You know, usually we do 5 o'clock in the evening because it's a good time for people on the East Coast. I can do any time in the afternoon. I can do it in the morning. If it's good enough, I'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, fire up Blog Talk, and we will do a show at 3 o'clock in the morning. And as long as you want. Because I want to get that information out there. I want people to know that they're empowered, not by a couple of guys, but that they're part of a swarm.
They're self-empowered, Marshall.
They're self-empowered.
That's right. And let me tell you, you're talking about 3 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. I think that's what part of this awakening is, an energy level, because it's hard to do. It's not hard. I love it. We've done 130-something videos in less than 8 weeks. I feel a need, and someone's telling me to do this, and I can't rest until I do. Because of this frequency and this energy level, I think that's part of the entire process, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So now, talk to your audience, Jess. Just talk to them about if they want to have a report that they're finding something, they're collaborating with maybe 2 other people, 2 or 3. You know, if you want to come on as a small team of collaborators, you want to do a panel, I love it.
That would be wonderful. And, Marshall, we have that already. I'm telling you, if anybody wants to get the world news in real time, Go to my channel. The comments on the main channel are so full of every volcano, every earthquake, every solar flare, every comet that I can't keep up with it.
I know. And
I love it.
But
I mean,
let's be honest. You and I could disappear that fast, Jesse.
Yeah, and it wouldn't matter. That's my point. I've done my job. I'm not going to stop doing my job. But if I had to stop right now, if a black helicopter came over and pulled me up, they haven't done anything. They're just going to start a bigger fire because it's going to make people more interested. Then we must have been onto something if they shut us down. But it's too late. They have the tools now. I could walk away, and it's still going to grow. The knowledge is going to grow.
That's right. That's right. But what I want us to do is to provide a forum for these people so that there's a way for them to reach out. I want to help other people to be successful doing the same kind of things that we're doing. I want to help give them a chance to get started and let them build their own name, build their own brand, whatever they want to do, pull together their own research teams. But at least give them a traction point so that they can get out there and they can do this, because I am in it for the species.
Exactly.
I am in it for the species. And as long as I know I am keeping faith with that mission, you know, if I fall in my tracks, so be it. I fall in my tracks. But I know that when I do, it's not going to be for a lack of trying, and it won't be because I turned my back on the mission. So now, talk to the people and walk them through the process of contacting you and do it. I'll tell you what, Larry, you're here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Larry, I want you to be the guinea pig.
Okay.
You up to that?
Sure.
He says with a little bit of hesitation in his voice.
No problem.
Neither one of us are sure what you're getting us into here now.
I know. It's kind of like a blind date with Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, really. You got me worried now.
Okay. But
we
now,
might need some. Hey, let's get some callers in to save us, Larry, please. Somebody call in quick. I'm worried now.
Hey, where's the disinfo pukes when we need them?
Yeah, really. Somebody call in and cuss me out. I'll feel better.
Okay, we can arrange that. But anyway, here's what I want you to do. I mean, because while you're doing this, we've got 15 minutes left in the show. I got 3 people that I need to screen, okay? Give me about 5 minutes while I'm doing it, guys, because I'm going to jump in the screening room. I want to catch some of these calls. And while we're doing it, Larry, I want you to come up with a harebrainedest idea you can actually cook up right now. Understand? That's what you got to do. Is you got to get
dangerous.
Oh, that's it. There you go. Be dangerous.
Okay, Larry, I'm waiting. Hit me.
Okay.
To come up with the most harebrained scheme I can imagine?
I'm glad he asked you first.
Well, it's funny he should say that, because I always thought this was kind of harebrained, and then I just happened to be, as a hobby, I practice hypnosis, and I work a lot with like my own and other people's subconscious, and it's opened up a whole Pandora's box of information. But one of the things, Jesse, and you're probably familiar with this too, that I kind of stumbled across was, it's like you can go into somebody's past and you can predict the future, but sometimes the future is harder to predict and it's more fuzzy and it's more changeable. The past seems to be set. Now, maybe you know where I'm headed with this, but one of my heroes in one of the books, one of my authors is Greg Braden and the Hopi people and their prayer traditions. And I got into this with Marshall on this Hopi Blue Star video. I got back into the Hopi thing, and I was like, wow, this is, it's pretty amazing, how these people were so enlightened. But anyway, when they talked about how the Hopi prayed, the Hopi didn't do a petitionary prayer the way I was taught to as a Baptist when I was growing up, where, oh God, please, help me pass this test. Oh God, please, cure my cancer. Oh God, please, take care of my son at war. I mean, no matter how noble the request can be, it's called a petitionary prayer. Whereas the Hopis practiced it, which is in a way that turned out to be quantumly correct in quantum physics. They didn't pray for rain. They closed their eyes and felt as if the water was on their face, and they visualized the wetness in the fields. And Greg Braden talked about this and developed a thing called coherent emotion. And so, Jesse, what I'm proposing is a harebrained scheme. What Greg Braden said and what the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in Iowa demonstrated with his followers when they did a group TM. That do you think, Jesse, that a lot of the dire events in the future can be averted with a focusing and a collective consciousness raising of a certain number of people on this planet? And if so, how would you do that?
Well, you're talking about, I guess, what I would call visual realization, where you almost project your thought into, and so that it becomes, you're so strongly projected that it becomes that.
Yes.
But here's our, I can't help go back to this. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. No matter what we think, there's a plan higher than our knowledge. Now, as we become awakened, Larry, we will become aware of that plan. But no matter what, we can improve ourselves, and we can improve the way that we treat other people and improve the world around us that way and care about other people. But as far as the events unfolding in our universe and what's going to happen, there's not a damn thing we can do about it except be prepared mentally, physically, and spiritually. And so I understand what you're saying, and I have seen it happen in the past when people did exactly what you're talking about, and it came true in their life. They were projecting a better future or a better path, and it happened. But as far as the events that are coming down in our universe, they're coming.
Okay, Jesse?
Yeah.
All right. Guys, if I can step in here really quick, because we've got 12 minutes of airtime left, although we can go into overtime, and that'll just be for the archive downloads, and people can catch that. But we have 3 questions, 3 callers. We need to go pretty quick. One is going to be, we've had her back. Tracy's coming back, so here we are. And Tracy, real quick, your question for the fellows.
Yes, sir. I saw today on IntelliHub, it was an article from yesterday about bioweapon on civilian populace as doomsday event looms, where they've ordered 44 million doses of the vaccine for anthrax. And they covered all the good stuff, you know, the FEMA drills, the underground bunkers, the inundation with movies and whatnot on the doomsday scenarios. Even Representative Brad Sherman on martial law, the FEMA warning that went out to folks. Have y'all heard anything about how these things play in with this? Because, you know, when you go and click on these things to research them, because you just don't take somebody's word for it, they mention, say, taking a look at Operation Garden Plot. Well, I can tell you, you don't want to click on that link. After about 5 tries today, it shuts down your computer, it freezes everything up, and then you start getting Skype calls from somebody wanting to tell you, you know, you're having some kind of dangerous virus or this, that, or the other. Just instant inundation, which is the same thing we experienced, my aunt and I, right after I talked to you. Both of our computers went down as far as your show was, and we couldn't get back on for several minutes. So if you've covered this kind of thing, please forgive me. But there's another lady out there having trouble listening to your show. It seems like you're almost targeted when you want to discuss something that doesn't need to be discussed, apparently. But do y'all know anything about these kinds of government involvement in these things? As you noticed with my earlier question, it's the same kind of ideas. They seem to know something. And you know, we're all out here trying to figure out which fire is closest to our bum and how do we avoid it. And there's so many things coming from different ways. Do you have any input on that kind of stuff for us so that we know where to look?
Okay.
Larry, what have you heard about it?
Oh, Marshall, I would just say that sounds so familiar. Come on, you heard me talk about that very same thing. There's just so much out there that this info keeps going on. I mean, I could go into talking about, you know, I'm not quite sure. She said, what was she in Panama? Is that what she said?
She's in Florida.
Oh, well,
and
I mean, you know,
my aunt is in the Panama country, not in Panama City, Florida. She's down in Panama country.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Significantly south of us.
It may sound kind of crazy, but I've even had talks with Marshall about this, is that, you know, we can document things, and if they're going to happen or not, would it really change what you do?
No, and that's the thing, is my husband is one of those that I just want to live, and if I'm going to get blown away, just so be it. It took me, been married to him for 12 years. For the last 6 years, I've been trying to get him to store up a little bit of food and water for hurricane events. This last year, suddenly watching our progression of research, he has gone from that attitude into one of, we need to be prepared. Now I have crates of food that are crated up and ready to go. My sheds have been cleaned out. My truck is ready to go. From a man who didn't want to hear about this stuff not very long ago and still really doesn't. And doesn't really, you know, his constant thing is, oh, when is it going to end? I'm hearing about the world ends, and then another date goes by and nothing happens.
Okay, and
he didn't get alarmed until September 29th when everybody ran for the hills, including the president, and he went, the truck was packed that night.
So look what's happening.
What
the consciousness of your husband is raising.
That's exactly right.
Right. It's the consciousness is raising. Tracy, thank you so much. I'm going to have to let you go because we've got to really get through. We've got 2 other folks that are patiently waiting in the queue. But I'm going to answer this question to you directly.
NBC News said the president is in Denver tonight.
No, that was back on October, or no.
No, there's another meeting going on.
He's there tonight?
Tonight. It was on the NBC News here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
At 6 o'clock, yeah. Some type of meeting going on in Denver.
That's right.
Sure is.
Well, I'm going to say, all right, Tracy, everybody, go, if you haven't seen the movie 2012, you go see it. The first time you watch it, forget the brain candy about the world blowing up and all that, because that's nonsense. Well, that's Hollywood science. But Emmerich, and I had to go back and see it a couple of times before I got it, Emmerich really lays out how governments, the elites, and the wealthy are going to make sure that you don't know jack until the day you're dying. And then you're not even going to know where the heck it's coming from. That's what they want. This is about a nice big eugenics deal. The more people that don't see it coming, the more people that you don't have to feed after the disaster. It's just as simple as that. You know, so you have to decide what you want to do. But yeah, people are coming in to awareness. I'm talking to more folks right now that are having family members doing this. And what I'm going to tell you is don't force awareness on people. You're going to get their backs up, and it's going to be worse. Just let them know that you know the information, and you don't do anything until they come to you with questions, and then just answer the questions. If they come to you and they ask a question and you go, oh, great, I can vomit 2 years of research on their head today and be really cool. No, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to switch them off. You got to be very, very quiet. You got to listen and answer just the questions directly, and then you can steer them in a way of preparation planning. Now let me come to, we've got, I believe, Tina here. It's coming in, and hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Marshall.
Holly.
Hi, Marshall.
Yep. You're
Hi,
on the air.
and Jesse. Okay, my question is, what does Jesse see coming in? Is he thinking along the lines of a brown dwarf? And also, you, Marshall, what are you thinking right now after all this research that you've done? And do you, either one of you, are you thinking that Richard Hoagland is right on with his 19.5 calculations that it's a spaceship, Elinin? Thank
Marshall,
you.
Go ahead, Marshall.
On Hoagland,
I don't know much about him.
I saw the imagery, and he had to use Photoshop to create it. It's like whatever. I mean, with Hoagland, I've seen him do trial balloons in the past. I can remember when Hoagland had one of the best Planet X pages on the internet, and then one day, poof, he just pulled it, okay? So you never know when he's going to redact or he's going to come out with something. To me, he's not consequential in anything that we do. You know, we find it's a good source of information. He has excellent sources of information, but I don't view Hoagland personally for the work that we're doing as a reliable source. I'm sorry.
Now, Marshall, I do think that we're possibly dealing with a binary twin star. Again, I go back to anybody that wants to look at Phoenix 3333. I'm not pushing anybody. It's just that this guy's on top of it. He's got a YouTube channel. I think he's got a radio station. But the binary twin star, people need to read about that. It's not necessarily a sun. It's a collapsed star that never reached nuclear fission. And when it collapses like that, what it does is become so small that the density is so mass in the gravitational pull, and in this sense, the laser pull, that I think that one of the objects that we're tracking, probably the first one on SETI, is what we're dealing with, a binary twin. And it would, again, it matches all the profiles.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what is a safe forecast for the future. Pain.
And enlightenment, Marshall. Look at it positive.
Okay. God, that reminds me of
there's going to be a little pain in there, but we can handle that. We're tough.
It's like that. Did you ever see the movie Life of Brian? And the end of the movie, they're all hanging on the crosses, going, "Always look on the bright side of life." Do-do, 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 do-do. Okay, there you go. You got me there. Thank you, caller. We're going to get to the next folk, and I'm going to bring on. We have Brian, and Brian has a question about Montezuma.
Yeah, just wanted to talk about, like Aztecs, they had, information passed down in generations. Well, Montezuma, he slayed as an astronomer and astrologer, I think it's all one and the same, because he knew that a comet foretold a cataclysmic event. Ended up being La Perouse invading him. But, couldn't the comet foretell Planet X?
Okay.
Well, that's where we get so much of our information from, is the Mayan and Incas, Hopi. I mean, and they had to have extraterrestrial or somebody with a higher knowledge to to teach them what they knew. So they were onto something.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were, this reoccurs, you know, but maybe doesn't this comet come ahead of the Planet X or not? Or is this just...
Yes, it does. It sure does. There's a harbinger, just like Marshall says, there's a harbinger as an eye-opener to get ready.
Right. We all got to get together and we can pray. That's all we can do.
Well, God's in control. Don't worry about it. We're going
to but as it actually said in the Hopi verbiage on that, it's time to spiritually prepare.
That's right.
Now more than ever.
If you think about it, there's nothing else we can do but be ready to change.
Right.
You know, fellas, there's one thing I always do. I always listen to that little voice inside. And that's the one thing I could tell everyone out there. If you want to know what your number one survival skill is going to be, is it's going to be your ability to listen to that little voice inside you. And but to do that, you got to be able to be calm. You got to stay frosty. And if you do that, you're going to know, you're going to sense where to go. And there's no guarantees of who makes it out of this thing alive, okay? There's no guarantees. You can try and hedge your bets all you want. But, you know, you trust in a higher force. And that's what pulls you through. That's what the ancients tell us, too. And, guys, we have gone into overtime here. So, caller, thank you so much. And let's wrap up on these final thoughts. And I'll go to Larry.
Well, you know, again, I thought more things might happen actually prior to this day with Elinin, and you know, we research things and try to stay as scientifically focused as possible, and yet we're aware of prophecy, but you know, we try to keep our heads down and present the information. And I know it gets so confusing at times, and it's like, you know, here I can see it continuing on, and despite some degree of jadedness that I'm sure our listeners can share by now, that just keep looking up, you know, stay focused, you know, listen to that voice inside, listen for the truth, because it's not over. It continues.
I agree 100%, Larry.
Marshall? Jesse?
Yeah, we having somebody.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we had
a phone. We had a phone crash here.
Yeah, we had a phone crash, but I went to back up.
Oh, okay.
And so we're in overtime here, and I just want to thank both of you guys for a heck of a show. The callers were fabulous tonight. The chat room, a lot of great comments in there, and it's been an excellent show.
Larry, and first off, Comet Elinin, upshot real quick. What do you see in Jesse, and then I'll go to you, Larry.
Well, we did a video yesterday, Marshall, about the update. We had started tracking. What was strange about it is after the show last weekend on the 18th, some of our YouTubers immediately noticed the object coming in on our stereo A images from SETI with the naval satellite.
Right.
So we did an update. We have been updating it since the 18th. So in New Mexico, we had two astrologers on the 22nd decide to break out their telescopes, and they did two-day imaging from the 22nd and the 23rd there.
Jesse, is that astrologers or astronomers?
Excuse me, Marshall. It's been a long day. It's astronomers. Excuse me. Thank you for.
That's how you pronounce it.
Look, keep me straightened out. Things are happening so fast. Yeah, exactly. Two astronomers. Now, and what they did was they did 2 days of snapshots so they could compare movement. And that's how you do it. You have to compile the images and look at the change in motion with a star field behind you. And what they did was detect a gas cloud, and they put it up on Space Weather. We put a video up about it, and they showed the movement of the gas cloud. It had the blue halo in it, and it was tracking with the JPL model. And so they determined that it was the remnants of Elinin. And so, but now the object we're tracking on stereo on the A satellite actually has it's not just a gas cloud, it has a interior solid mass. And what they did today was come back with those same images in the infrared spectrum, Marshall, and it was showing that the gas cloud was short on one end and fat on the other, just like the wingtip of a plane, like you would see. In other words, it was tapering back from one end. So it's detecting there is an object there. And so we're tracking, keeping that updated, and it's right there. You can go and look at it for yourself.
All right. All right. And Larry Prescott of the Elinin research team. And Larry, I know you and Ed have really been busy with chit-chat and following on all this. What have you got?
Well, I think this is interesting in that it reckons back to when I worked with Ed and Richard, and we were all talking and predicting about this gas and the type of gas that was going to be around Elinin. And I believe it was Richard or Ed pointed out that it was going to be hydrogen cyanide. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, and so now, and then I'm looking at Jesse's video, and he's saying the same thing. He's pointing out the hydrogen cyanide. Jesse, I don't know if you knew that when we were all talking about this back then, but I find it interesting now that that's
where I got the information from, Larry.
Well, very nice, thank you. But anyway, it's kind of cool to see that in one sense come to pass. And now the other thing, it's kind of interesting to see if it happens, is what Jesse was referring to in the the electrical nature of it. That how if it could illuminate, not necessarily a big explosion, but an illumination. And I'm just kind of curious if that might be a bright blue. But again, we'll see. But the most interesting thing I want to throw out real quick, guys, is that I just find it so interesting that on November 8th, that the asteroid comes within, what, 200,000 miles of Earth, like within the moon orbit, and just kind of like no fanfare or whatever. Why U-55?
There's not much fanfare on any of it, Larry. If you don't go to YouTube, and those kind of guys or go to YouTube, there's no fanfare about it at all. And what you pointed out was it's 0.9 LD. The comet is. That's less than 1 lunar distance. And when you get within that distance, when you're that close to Earth, the gravitation of Earth has a tremendous change on the projected path.
Well, that doesn't make me feel better.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I know what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that, what I'm interested in seeing is the overall pattern of comets that are now being observed, and particularly sun grazers and sun impactors. What are the two of you guys seeing on that that's different? Larry, I'll throw that one at you, then back to Jesse.
What am I saying in terms of identification of them?
Frequency, severity.
Well, I tell you what, it seems like there's a whole lot more of them. I think Jesse in his one video was, that may be touched upon later, that he was remarking how there's quite a number of them out there right now. And it's like, NASA can pick and choose the ones they want to report or casually mention on a flyby later. So I guess the answer to that, there seems to be a lot more. Then you can take that beyond, okay, now what's causing all this?
Yeah. What's causing all that? That's the good question. That one I'll throw back at you, Jesse.
Marshall, it goes back to a video, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think we have 130 videos up. We've been up 7.5 weeks. But it's called the Grand Alignment, and you guys have talked about this too, and it goes back to the actual date of December 21st, 2012. And now we know that the Mayan ninth wave ends on the 28th from the charts that I've seen. I'm no expert in that field, but the actual alignment where between the Earth, the Sun, and the galactic center is on December 21st, 2012, the winter equinox. And if you study that video, you will see that we are not part of the Milky Way. We are in the Milky Way, but we are a sub-galaxy of the Sagittarian galaxy. We're colliding at an opposite angle with a wing of the Milky Way. And if you remember, the scientists took a infrared telescope with cameras with it was a real high, like 20 millimeters or something, and they mapped all the stars in the Milky Way trail and in our area in the infrared spectrum. Then they put the data together and made maps. I put their map on the video called the Grand Alignment, and it's like two saw blades coming into each other at different angles. When you see the video and those images, I don't see how we're even here now. There's so much collision going on that it will blow your mind. Just take a look at that video. That's going to explain why we're having this extra bombardment, and it's also increasing what I call galactic heat or solar heat. Friction does that, and as you come closer to these objects, then they're combining heat, and so we've got multiple forces at play. But this Grand Alignment, I think, is the key to the whole thing.
Even more so than anything else we've been looking at, Planet X, Comet Elinin?
Well, no, it's the cause of all of that.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? If you look at that video, Marshall, and any of you guys out there, you will be amazed at why we're even still alive. We're coming in such a stream of debris.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The hand of God is over us.
And, you know, I would say that there's a good case to be made for that. If there's one thing that I learned is that we do have friends out there. We may not think of them in the way that we would normally think of as friends, but one of the things that really became apparent to us, especially when we were doing channeling research, was there are a lot of races out there. The only way they can connect is through this mental telepathy of sorts, and you know, they're rooting for us. But I think that there's also, you see an awful lot of these other websites out there that are talking about there's active participation. I mean, a classic one is Zeta Talk with Nancy Leader, and she's out there channeling the Zetas all the time. You know, but I mean, that's kind of hard to say. The Zetas told her Planet X would be here in 2003, and we missed the boat on that. So, you know, and I remember having her on my show, and she said, well, they did it to trick George Bush into launching the Iraq War so that it would drain the economy. And you know, the funny thing is when she said that, I mean, it was maybe back in 2004, 2005, and I remember when she said that, I was going, boy, that's a real stretch, Nancy. That's a real stretch. I'm thinking that. But, you know, it kind of played out that way, fellas. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Larry?
Oh, yeah.
So, what is in terms of the Comet Elinin saga, all right, I mean, I saw, Jesse, you had on your YouTube channel, you did a video on we're going to be passing through the gas tail, and you were concerned about it because, I mean, it's a deadly toxic gas, but the question I have is there enough concentration to be a genuine concern?
Well, Marshall, we don't know that. We don't know it. We just got that information a day and a half ago. I mean, they confirmed it. And so all we can do is speculate. Now, in the beginning, what they were talking about was with the blue glow as Elinin was incoming, that they can determine by the color the type of gas. And if you read back on blue and on the cyanide, that's what that comes from.
Oh yeah, no, we documented that in our video, and I will say that, Jesse, that is a legitimate concern because when Halley's Comet passed through, I think it was 1910, that caused quite a lot of panic because it had only been a few decades that they had the ability to do that. All right, the spectrometry, and you know, so when they found out that Halley's Comet had hydrogen cyanide, I mean, people were panicking. They were buying the very most early versions of gas masks in those days, Comet pills. There were songs about I'm going to die when it comes, and people were having let's die with, you know, Halley's Comet songs. I mean, that's really cheerful. And so there is, you know, there was really genuine concern, but it passed by. There was no concern for us.
Marshall, some of the things that are different now, if I can point them out, is that we have the largest hole in our upper atmosphere ever recorded, okay? The shields are down. That hole is larger than the continental United States. Last night, we had a solar blast that struck our atmosphere. On the Boulder K index registered, I think it was a 7 or maybe a 6.5, but it was a 1.5 higher than that when you looked at the final models. There were red auroras in Alabama and Mississippi. We've never seen them here before. Red indicates the strongest type. Normally you'll have your blue and green shades. Red is the strongest type of energy when it penetrates. We also had a compression of our atmosphere from it. If you'll look at the latest video I did this afternoon after the show, it's called Elinin and the Two Nephews. You'll see the compression effects. The video is from NASA. It's amazing. It's the live, 2-day-old SETI images of this, and as it approached Earth, and as it approached our atmosphere, and so you've got that. Now, people have asked, why is this the 28th important with the alignment of Jupiter when we do it every 11 years? Well, this time, what it is, Jupiter is not in a perfect circle in its orbit. You see what I'm saying? And when it's an elliptical orbit, and the difference between its closest approach to Sun on one orbit and in the orbit now is 50 million miles, okay? We won't be this close to Jupiter again until 2022. So you've got your solar flares, our shields are down, we've got the magnetic pull of Jupiter dealing with. Now, there's a possibility, and Phoenix 3333, one of the YouTube guys, Marshall, that I think he called in on the last show, is real sharp, and he's talking about a binary twin to our Sun, and that's why we're seeing the images as they appear on the SETI-HI-1 images. If you look at the reverse gray ones and the tail that's on this thing that's not visible, it makes a lot of sense to me, but our shields are down. It's our closest approach to Jupiter. We're in a solar maximum. That's why it's all different.
So that is, all right. All right. You know,
well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, Jessie, do you see that as having a connection to the Mount Etna eruptions, the Turkey earthquakes? I mean, you know, for the longest time there was all this speculation that Elinin or something near it. I mean, is it a type of geomagnetic effect or something that something external though that is manifesting in what's going on the Earth?
It's a combination of things, Larry, and none of them are good. You've got, we're in our solar maximum, our shields are down. Now, you've got to understand the way the Earth heats up. When we receive energy from the Sun, we receive it as high frequency. The waves are real short and real powerful. If you look at them on a sine wave, like on an oscilloscope, they can penetrate the upper atmosphere. The Earth and the surface of the Earth, the oceans, they absorb this, and as it's released slowly in a low frequency or slow wave pattern. Now, as you build up, if you've got chemtrails, if you've got greenhouse effect, and you have heavy bombardment, it's called a global or solar equilibrium that we release at low frequency at the same rate that we receive at high frequency, and we're not doing that. So as we're heating up the atoms inside the Earth and dealing with Elinin, especially if this thing turns out to be a variant star with a totally different magnetic field, that could, if it is one, the density of it's going to be incredible. But we're dealing with it on that level also. So if we're dealing with Jupiter, we're dealing with solar maximum again, and this heat is exactly the magma's rise